Welcome back, horror fans, cinephiles, and Giallo enthusiasts, or maybe Giallo beginners. This is Tanner Leeser for The King in Giallo, and I wanted to do an extended version of my short video, which is best Giallo films to get started with. In terms of a subject, I decided not to actually script this video. I've been doing a lot of unscripted videos, and I feel like I can probably just riff on this. I don't need to write out a paragraph or two for each of my choices. I should be able to just justify them by talking freely. Okay, so if you are familiar with that short, I have 5 movies on there that are good options to get started with. This video is essentially the same, so I decided I will do 10 Giallo films. I will include those 5, but I will give 5 more. The main difference between this video and that short is not a huge difference. The short is mostly like, these are good Giallo films to get started with. This video specifically is one Giallo film to get started with. So you're either going to be watching this as someone who's already seen Giallo films, and ultimately this doesn't affect you because you've already gotten started. But as a fan, I think this is an interesting topic in terms of, if you show Giallo films to others, what might be a good first Giallo to watch. So that's, I know it's not like the best description, but the difference is essentially, the short was like, start with these gialli, and this video is, here are options for the first Giallo to begin with. If you are watching this video and you have not seen a Giallo film yet, I mean, I don't know what percentage of the viewers for this video will actually be complete noobs to this, complete virgins to Giallo, but this video is kind of for you. These are my picks. These are my selections for Giallo films that I think would be very good to begin with, to start your journey with, to say, that was the first one I saw. And some of these, going off of that list I have in the shorts, some of these 10, including those 5, are going to be good choices in terms of chronological order, like the first ones to do something well, the first ones to set off the whole boom of Giallo. Other ones are going to be, this is going to be a good one to start with if you're a slasher fan. Some other ones are going to be good choices to start with, as they these options kind of transcend the genre a little bit. Not too much though, because I actually will make a list of Giallo films that I believe transcend the genre, and I'm not sure if any of those are actually on this list for today. And then I will also include a couple that I know a lot of my viewers have said that was my first one, and I figured I wanted to highlight those films that a lot of people actually started with. So let's get right into it. So I will start this list with the 5 films I mentioned in the 60-second short. And this is in no particular order. First one is The Girl Who Knew Too Much, 1963 by Mario Bava. This is the first Giallo film. Now, with talking about genre cinema, there's always going to be kind of a little disagreement in terms of what is the first. There's always things leading into a genre's formation that influence it. Then you get to a point where it's like, this is the first one, or at least this is the first one that set it off. This is the first one generally agreed upon in terms of chronological order. The 60s very much were the proto-Giallo era. These were the early ones, kind of like how slasher films have the proto-slasher era. These are movies that played with the formula before it really, truly was a solid formula. The Girl Who Knew Too Much is a great one to start with. It is a murder mystery. It is in black and white, but that's not black and white because it's an old movie. It's black and white because that was generally the stylistic choice back in the day to tell to tell audiences, my movie is a horror movie. And this is a really good thriller. It's very stylistic. You have Letitia Roman and John Saxon, who John Saxon appears Later in the genre, he appears in Black Christmas. This is just a really good, solid thriller. It has some really good elements. There's a great sequence with a trap. There's a lot of great usage of shadows. And in terms of a reveal, I guess I could say it's ahead of its time. What it does is something that becomes very popular in the genre as it moves forward into the later 60s, and then when it takes off in the 70s. So The Girl Who Knew Too Much, I think you can't go wrong with this being your first one. The only thing that I do get worried about if people start with this is they might watch it and just think, I didn't really like that. I don't know if I'm going to like this genre. But I think it's a great choice, like I said, considering it is the first. And if you watch that, you can see where it all started, and then you can see where it went. Second option is Blood and Blacklace, 1964, also Mario Bava. So this came out a year after, and this is where the genre, the tropes, the formula start to get a little distilled. They start kind of forming a bit. And the 60s, generally, they're going to be all over the place with these early Giallo films. Because a lot of people think of a Giallo as it's an Italian slasher, kind of like spaghetti westerns are, those are Italian westerns. There is a little bit more to it, especially when you look back in the 60s. They could be so many different types of movies that maybe don't even have a murder at all. Or maybe it's just one kill that comes at the very end. But Blood and Blacklace is really the first one, I believe, that is a slasher whodunit. Although saying slasher is kind of a bit much. But this film did receive an X rating when it came out. So that kind of shows you how provocative it was with both the violence and the sexual themes. And there's no nudity in the movie, if I recall. It's just a very sexy movie. Blood and Blacklace is going to be a great choice. I think most hardcore fans, most Giallo veterans will say that Blood and Blacklace you should choose over The Girl Who Knew Too Much because it's closer to what you're going to see throughout it. You got this killer stalking around in all black with the black gloves and the black hat, and they even have a face mask on. And so there is this aesthetic of the killer, which this movie does set up. And all in all, it is a really good movie. I first heard about this movie in Bravo's 100 Scariest Movie Moments. Pretty impressive that a foreign film was in there, but I guess to be fair, they did have a lot of foreign films in there. That's how I also found out about Suspiria. Blood and Blacklace is a great option for your first Giallo film. Like I said, a lot of the veterans will say you can't go wrong with that one. Also, I just remember this. Blood and Blacklace has, I think, a greater influence on the later slasher genre than many other Giallo films, at least any Giallo films that come for close to 10 years later. Third option is The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, 1970, directed by Dario Argento. This I call the trendsetter. This is the first Giallo that is a Giallo. Everything before this I consider to be a proto-Giallo. Still a Giallo, just the early ones. And the reason why I say that is The Bird with the Crystal Plumage was the one that was both commercially successful and critically successful. After this movie came out, studios looked at each other and said, we could milk this. We could hire directors and writers to make other films just like this, not too expensive, and we could just rake in the money. And that's what they did. Then the Giallo boom set off in 1970, 71, 72. You have a lot in 71 and 72, there were a lot. It kind of dipped a bit in 73, and then it shot back up again. But this is where it started. And so, just like talking about slashers, how there's all these early films, and then Halloween kind of became such a success that critics liked it. You know, Bird with the Crystal Plumage is great choice, easily. Like I said, in terms of getting to know the genre, it's a great first choice. It is also Dario Argento's debut film. It's a perfect debut film. There's another one I have in here that is a debut film, but The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, you can't go wrong. All the Giallo veterans are going to say that, it's going to be in all the top 10 lists, probably. And I think most people would say either start with Blood and Blacklace, start with Bird with the Crystal Plumage, or start with this other option, which I'll get to later. Fourth option is A Bay of Blood, 1971 by Mario Bava. Yet again, we have Mario Bava, who is the grandfather of Italian horror and the grandfather of the Giallo. Bay of Blood I have in here because, I mean, it is a really good murder mystery. It bounces all over the place, though, in terms of it's a bunch of people offing each other. So you are still trying to figure out who's killing people, but it's clear that there's more than just one person going around killing people. But Bay of Blood I have as a great first Giallo option for people especially that are fans of slashers. Oh, you like slashers, do you? Oh, you like Friday the 13th? Oh, do you? Watch A Bay of Blood. Whether Sean Cunningham wants to admit it or not, Friday the 13th looks like a clone of Bay of Blood. Maybe it's not, but it certainly looks like it, and God damn it, they took 2 kills from the movie. One appears in Friday the 13th Part 1. Another kill appears in Friday the 13th Part 2. The second kill, absolutely. The kill that's in Part 2 is like, without a doubt, you stole that kill. The first one, sometimes people just have the same idea, but that other one is too close, especially because of the setting of A Bay of Blood is around a lake. The kills in A Bay of Blood are extremely graphic. It's one of the first Giallo films that really focuses on the gore and focuses on the kills and decides, well, like, hell, why aren't we making these entertaining? And this movie had a lot to influence on the slashers in terms of, that's why when you watch slashers, a lot of them lean into the gore, especially with Friday the 13th. Halloween's not too gory. Friday the 13th got Tom Savini to do the special effects, and oh yeah, they're gory. And again, look at A Bay of Blood. Look at how gory it is. Great first Giallo option for slasher fans, as well as the fifth choice, Torso, 1973, directed by Sergio Martino. Torso now is called by a lot of horror film historians as an early slasher, as well as a Giallo. This is, again, if you are a fan of slasher films, if you are just a fan of slasher films, you don't even want to watch Giallo, you should watch Torso. Great kills, not as gory, but I would say scarier. Bay of Blood is not necessarily scary. Not necessarily. Torso is. Torso, you also have a killer stalking a bunch of defenseless young women up at I guess it's a school? Same reason why you should watch Bay of Blood for your first Giallo if you are a slasher fan. You should consider Torso as well. Okay, now these are the new ones. Sort of. I do mention this one in the short, but I don't list it. But that is, and this was, my first Giallo, Deep Red by Dario Argento, 1975. Now, this is what I will say. You can't go wrong with this movie in terms of it's great. However, and this is the problem that I faced for years, and I'm kind of now a decade later coming out of it. After I watched Deep Red, and I decided, I really like this genre. Oh, and none of my friends know about this. I'm gonna lean into it. I'm gonna be the one now finding all these gems that they've never heard of, and I'm gonna show these films to them. Well, Deep Red really is, and this is my opinion, although I'm not saying this as my top Giallo films list, but Deep Red really is the perfection. It really is everything that was great about The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. Dario Argento goes above and beyond with Deep Red. And so for me, watching Deep Red and then going back and watching The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, Blood and Black Lace, Don't Torture a Duckling, any of these other Giallo films, great Giallo films by great directors, none of them hit as hard. They all had moments that I liked, and I rarely ever found a movie that I didn't like, but none of them were as good. I had to put it on there, and again, these aren't like a ranked list, and I think a lot of people will agree with me with Deep Red, and for the reason I gave, a lot of people will say don't start with Deep Red. Also, if you don't know whether you're going to like this genre, watch Deep Red. Now, this doesn't mean that there's no other Giallo film that's as good. Everyone's got their own opinions. For me, it's just Deep Red was the best. I have seen a lot since, but the first several years, after, it was really hard to find anything that was even on the level. And in the decades since, I can now watch movies, and I've kind of brought my expectations down. I'll get crucified for this. I've said this before. I love giallo films, but they're not a genre that I can show to all of my friends, because I imagine most people are just not going to get it. It's like, I'm also a huge Godzilla fan. I'm not going to be like, come on, you're coming over tonight and we're watching Godzilla versus the Smog Monster. Most people are not going to get it. And if they don't like guys in a suit running around stomping on models, they're not going to like it. Giallo films are kind of like that. You really have to either have a taste for horror films or have a taste for foreign films. You got a friend who likes spaghetti westerns, who likes horror films, they'll probably have a good time. You just have to go into it kind of accepting something, kind of accepting a few things. And so watching Deep Red and then going and seeing all these other giallo films, I kind of had like this bar set really high, like, oh, they're all going to be this just perfectly blended together. And for a while, it just wasn't the case for me. But that's besides the point. So yes, Deep Red is a great first giallo film to start with. Just be aware that you might taint the rest of them moving forward. Seventh option, and I put this one on here because a lot of my older viewers told me this was the first giallo film they ever saw. That is The Night Evelyn Came Out of the Grave, 1971. Now, honestly, I was not a big fan of it when I saw it last year. That doesn't mean it's bad. I think I went into it expecting a different movie, and the movie that we got, not bad, but it wasn't really what I was expecting. Again, that's not to say this is a bad movie. This is a great movie. This is a great giallo. Having rewatched it several times hence, I can now say that I've gotten over whatever was my issue beforehand. So I would say that I believe if you asked a lot of those viewers who saw The Night Evelyn Came Out of the Grave as their first giallo film, I think they would probably tell you, yeah, it got me into it. I don't know all their stories. I think they might have been really young when they saw it. Maybe they were a kid. It was playing on TV in a terribly edited version, but still, I'm not the best person to talk about The Night Evelyn Came Out of the Grave for reasons I've already kind of said, but I will say yes, it's a really good psychological gothic tale. It's one that somewhat transcends the genre in terms of it does a lot of stuff that's pretty different that you don't typically see in the genre. So on one hand, it might be a little odd to go in with that's your first one, because you might have a completely different expectation of what the genre has to offer afterwards. But also, it got a lot of people into the genre when, back in the 70s or 80s, whenever it was airing on television. And I know a lot of people that they'd be telling me about it in the comments if I didn't put it on there. And so this is for all of you who saw The Night Evelyn Came Out of the Grave as your first giallo. Eighth option is Tenebrae, 1982, directed by Dario Argento. This, very interesting. Also, again, another giallo that I know a lot of people saw as their first one. You know who you are. This movie is again, like Deep Red, this is a perfect distillation of the genre. Deep Red is, in my opinion, the better one because it was right in like the heat of when the genre was just in its prime. Tenebrae, after the genre kind of had its peak years in like maybe 75, you still have the latter half of the 70s where they were still popular, and then 78, 79, 80. Now we kick off slashers in the world, mostly in America, still other parts of the world. And so Tenebrae is this perfect little taking what we, especially someone who was a veteran who pioneered it in a way. Well, you want to say Mario Bava pioneered it. Dario Argento, like I said, made it popular. You get this professional, this veteran who gets to take everything that the genre was in the 70s, what it was starting to do now in the 80s, take a little bit from the slasher genre and just kind of mix it up and make this really great meta Giallo. It's one of the few very self-aware, very, I don't know how else to say, meta Giallo films. Great commentary on horror writing and what it does. I will say this, and now I had this thought earlier today, and I told myself I really have to think about this before I double down. I think Tenebrae might be stylistically better than Deep Red. Deep Red, my mind goes to, I love the music, I love a lot of the visuals, but I think Tenebrae actually like kicks it up a notch even more. Some of those kills are just like insane. And it's not necessarily the gore, it's just the way they're shot, everything. Like I think in terms of kills where the shirt gets cut and then you see the woman's face and then you see the razor go and the blood splatters and she falls back, falls through the glass and all this glass falls on her. That's probably more iconic than any kill in Deep Red. So yes, Tenebrae is a great pick. Another good reason why this is a great pick for a first Giallo film is how I said Deep Red, it's really hard to kind of watch the other movies because it's just like, how are you going to live up to this movie? Tenebrae is up there. My personal opinion is it's just not at Deep Red's level. I think Tenebrae is a great one to watch because you get to see what a really good Giallo is without seeing like what's generally considered to be the best one. So you still have a lot of things to watch after that are going to feel as good, if not maybe better, before you then also see Deep Red and it just ruins it all. Again, this is coming from someone who really likes Deep Red. But Tenebrae, I think, is a great option. Ninth option is The Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward, 1971, directed by Sergio Martino. This is another debut film from a director who would go on to make a lot of films in the genre. I already mentioned Torso of his films, which is really good in terms of this being like a whodunit slasher, which that description is what a lot of people assume Giallo is if you don't get into the nitty gritty of some of the other things it can be, like The Night Evelyn Came Out of the Grave. The Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward does have that kind of whodunit slasher vibe to it, although it doesn't really feel so much like a slasher, but there is someone going around killing people. There's a good amount of sex. This is a beautiful meld of the psychological aspects, which a lot of these films have, are a character kind of trying not to go insane. Those are a lot of the ones that are very fringe from the 60s that are like, well, it's maybe there's not even a kill in it, or maybe there's a kill that happens at the end when the person finally snaps or something. But Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward is a great Giallo option where someone is kind of trying not to go crazy as well as there are killings going on. And the music, I talked about this a lot already this year, the soundtrack by Nora Orlandi, rest in peace, is phenomenal. It really is one of the greatest soundtracks, and the music, in my opinion, really does make the movie. I mean, stylistically, this movie is beautiful. Musically, this movie is beautiful. Together, it is really one of the best combinations of both visual style and audible style. And visually, it doesn't go too over the top like some other 60s Giallo films by Umberto Lenzi, which I'm so sorry, it appears I don't have any Umberto Lenzi movies on the list. Or do I? But his movies can get a little over the top with the style where it's like crash zoom, crash zoom, crash zoom, crash zoom as like someone's dancing, or like a lot of colored lights, or all of a sudden the camera's looking through a kaleidoscope that's rotating and you're seeing, all these weird images, or the camera's just completely spinning around, or it's spinning like this. Crazy stuff that does go with what's going on, especially with the character's state of mind, but draws a little too much attention to itself. Like when these things happen, you're kind of like, oh, whoa, okay, the camera's spinning. Oh, geez, whatever. Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward, there is a lot stylistically going on, but if I recall, it never really makes you think about it. It's working in tandem with the storytelling and with the characterization, the character development, the arcs, everything, that it just melds perfectly. So yes, I don't know how many people ever started their giallo journey with The Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward, but I think it'd be a really great one to start with. And just like Tenebrae, there's so many directions to go from there. If you're a slasher fan, there's other options that might be a little better, that feel a little closer to home. Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward, if you're into psychological thrillers, if you're into, I guess I could say if you're into art films, like it's a little, it feels a little smarter. Funny enough, as many elements as it has, which you could call exploitation cinema, it feels the least exploitative. And there's a lot of stuff going on there with the main character, played by Edwidge Fenwick, is dealing with all this trauma from a past relationship, who she keeps seeing this abusive ex-boyfriend around, and then she'll have these flashbacks to when they used to hook up. They had a very S&M relationship. He was really big into, like, sadism, but she was also pretty big into masochism. So it worked out, but beyond that, he was also a piece of shit. I say all that to say that you are getting a lot of glimpses of their sexual relationship. And so you could see that as, this is just kind of like an exploitation film, but it's done so amazingly. And like I said, the visual style, the sound style, perfect. Tenth and final option for a first giallo film is The Fifth Chord, 1971, directed by Luigi Bazzoni. This is considered one of the greatest giallo films. This is also kind of an in-between of, it's a classic. Depending on how deep you go into the genre, you could consider it to be a deep cut. Not quite, though, because if you've seen a handful of giallo films, you've probably seen it. It's deep in terms of, it's not Bava, Argento, Martino, Fulci, Lenzi. I talk about Luigi Bazzoni so much that I do think he's the most underrated director in this genre. I think every film that he made that is a giallo is so good. The Fifth Chord is the most giallo of his gialli. This one actually follows the formula pretty closely. There is a mysterious killer going around. We have not a detective, we have a journalist, a reporter, who is trying to solve it because his life's falling apart, his career's falling apart. Damn it, if I could get the story, maybe I can get my wife back. And it's so good. Visually, it's beautiful. Cinematographer is Vittorio Storaro, who also worked on The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. He worked on a lot of Bazzoni's other films. He worked on Agatha, Apocalypse Now, The Last Emperor. Very notable. Fifth Chord is generally a giallo that I would say watch a lot, or watch a handful first before you get to. If somebody told me that The Fifth Chord was the first giallo film they ever saw, I would have a lot of questions. I would ask, who told you to watch that? Where did you find a copy of it? What did you just find this movie and want to watch it on your own? Like a lot of the other ones, like I said, there's a reason. I was a big Mario Bava fan, and then I saw a bunch of his other movies, and then I saw The Girl Who Knew Too Much, or that's how I saw that one first. Or someone told me that was the first one. I should watch that if I was curious. I could see how all these other movies, like I said, for all those reasons, how someone could end up watching this first. Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward is a little, someone had to have told you about that. Fifth Chord is the most like, how did you find that movie? But it both exists in this. It's a perfect example of a giallo. And it's one that's not by the big name directors of the genre, the people that everyone always points to, who made 5+ giallo films. No, this guy made maybe 3, and I say maybe 3 because the other ones, The Possessed and Footprints on the Moon, some people would say aren't. Like, some people would say Footprints is not a giallo. Some people would say The Possessed is not a giallo. I have said this in when I was going through the 60s and I recapped them, The Possessed was my favorite giallo of the 1960s. And I think I said The Fifth Chord was my favorite giallo of 1971. I have to go back. If it wasn't, it was definitely like number 2 or 3. So yeah, this guy's amazing. The Fifth Chord is one of those. It's a perfect giallo. It's so good. And it also kind of transcends the genre, not too much in terms of kind of. When I say transcends the genre, I mean you could watch this movie and not know anything about giallo. You don't have to be warned. It's like again, going back to Godzilla movies, there's a few monster movies, kaiju films that you could watch that you don't need to be warned beforehand. The War of the Gargantuas is actually a pretty damn good movie, and I don't think you need to be warned. By the way, it's a guy in a rubber suit movie. When I say transcends giallo, I'm basically saying this movie is so good on its own, you don't have to be a fan of this genre to watch it. Speaking of Luigi Bazzoni, I would say The Possessed is one of those movies that you could watch it as someone who just likes movies. If you've never seen a giallo film, you could watch The Possessed as your first one. The only thing I would say, the reason why The Possessed is not on this list, is it's maybe not a great example of what the genre is, because it is a giallo, yes. Bazzoni's films just feel like, and I said this before, he doesn't seem like he's necessarily interested in making a genre film. He's also made a bunch of spaghetti westerns, which I own one with Franco Nero and Klaus Kinski. I have not watched it yet. I'm probably actually going to watch it in the next couple days, and I'll have a review for that. But The Fifth Chord at least feels like a giallo. It doesn't transcend it too much in terms of, oh, well, this is just a really great detective story, but I don't know. The only thing I can say again for The Fifth Chord is just reiterating that it's somewhat of a deep cut, but if somebody were to see this as their first giallo, I would be very impressed. You could say that for a lot of movies, like, oh, Black Belly of the Tarantula was your first? Weird. Fifth Chord, I think, is better. I just really like Bazzoni. I don't know what else to say. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm sorry if I kind of got off the rails. This is what happens when I do unscripted videos. Part of me was thinking about actually scripting this and going through it, but sometimes it's more fun for me to just kind of riff. I don't know. I will be doing more videos kind of like this, where I'm giving you my top choices. Like I said, I will do a top 7 or top 10 giallo films that transcend the genre. That will probably be a part 1. Later I will do a part 2, because I think there's a lot and I haven't seen everything. So I don't want to make this video and be like, that's it, that's the list, and then I watch a couple giallo films when I'm going through 1972 and go, shit, that would have been really good for the list. In terms of the ones for beginners, I think this kind of nails it. Now, of course, there are giallo films I haven't seen, which some people might say that should go on the list, and that's fine. I might make a follow-up video for this, which are 3 more great giallo films to be your first. This was kind of a weird video to name. But anyways, thank you for watching. Thank you for making it this far to the end. Let me know if you're a giallo veteran, which I imagine most of my viewers are. What are your thoughts on my choices? Which choices would you make? I mean, I really do want to hear what you would say. Yeah, because I can only think in my own brain. Let me know what your choices would be. You can disagree with me, that's fine. But again, like I say, just don't be a dick in the comments. Doesn't serve anything. If you are new to the genre and haven't seen anything yet, please comment. I really want to talk to people who came across this video because they're curious and haven't seen anything. And yes, maybe if this video kind of swayed your decision, or maybe not, let some of us talk to you in the comments and give some input. I don't know. I just think it'd be really fun. I'm really big about trying to help bring this community of fans together. I say that because I've experienced a lot of, how do I put this? Animosity? It's kind of like certain game communities like League of Legends, like, oh, it's fun, and you'll find a lot of really cool people on there. And then you have some really toxic AF people who have been doing this longer, and they get really mad at anybody who is not on their level or who whatever. But I don't understand it. I get it, because I feel like a lot of people like myself were the one person in their group who really got into this genre, and they went in deep and they were like, I'm gonna be the one who knows everything. And maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like a lot of people took that and they haven't been able to break out of the fact that the world is kind of big and there's other people who like this genre too, and you don't have to be a gatekeeper and claim that you know everything. I'm getting off again. Anyways, that was my list. Leave any questions, thoughts, curiosities, or concerns in the comment section. I will generally get back to you. And leave a like. If you haven't yet, I would appreciate a subscribe. You can find me on Instagram if you want to communicate with me. And that's all I got. I'm Tanner Leeser, here for the King in Giallo. And if nothing else, hopefully I'll see you next time.
God damn it! Why can't you watch where you're going?
Sorry, I was thinking of Boston.
You women should stay home where you belong.
And you're an asshole. Ciao.